Because as this is a public meeting, we're also recording it. And I would like to call the meeting to order at 7:04. And I'm going to share the screen as best I can with our agenda. And okay, so
Okay, I'll be the scribe, Laura. I'm starting my chat. So,
okay, well, right now all I'm doing is trying to share the screen where people can see the whole agenda on the screen all at one time, which they cannot, so we'll just have to go through this. So can everybody see the agenda, even though I can't show you the whole thing right this sec? Is it showing on the screen?
Yep.
Okay, so the first item of the agenda is welcome, call to order, introductions, and then approval of the agenda. So I'm going to start with introductions. Well, welcome. And welcome to those who are present. UNNC operates a little differently than other neighborhood councils in that we only appoint the chairs and or co-chairs of our committees. And everybody else, anyone who attends one of our committee meetings as a participant is a member of that committee for the evening or morning, depending on when the thing is, but during the duration of the meeting. So that means anyone who's present today may make a motion and may vote and fully participate in the discussions. At governing board, only elected governing board members may make motions and vote, of course. So, and the whole purpose here is to help members, stakeholders, members of the public, our residents, our people who worship at churches, locally, people who own businesses, are able to fully participate in the neighborhood council. So all of that said, my name is Laura Myers. I am the co-chair of UNNC's Planning and Zoning Committee. I'm a very long time resident, hit 38 years in a week. So it's a very long time resident and of Angeles Vista, and currently UNNC's president. And John, if you could introduce yourself.
I am John Arnold. I am an at-large representative for the UNC. I've been on neighborhood council, Laura, if you believe it, for 13 years. And
oh my God, have you? I mean, I do beat you, but we're both old timers.
And my anniversary of living in Jefferson Park is going to be 20 years next month.
Wow. And because I'm sharing the screen, I can't see everyone, but Dan, if you could introduce yourself and then whoever else is here.
Sorry. And I'm an architect and I specialize in multifamily housing, so I have a lot to say about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dan.
I'm Dan Baer. I live in Jefferson Park, same region as John, and I'm just a stakeholder interested in what's going on.
Cool. And John, I can't at the moment see who else is here.
Jasmine, if you want to introduce yourself or say hi.
Hi all, I'm Jasmine Johnson. I am an at-large member, or soon to be at-large member, and I've been in the neighborhood for 3 years, I think next month, and no, actually last month, sorry. And I work for a nonprofit that does environmental justice work in the area.
Great. Steve Wallace, another old timer.
Hey there. Hopefully not too old timer.
I know. I use the O word.
Steve Wallace, Harvard Heights. Yeah, I've been here going on, 24 years now.
What?
Okay, so I already told Dan, I'm interrupting.
Right.
I finally am happy to be an old timer because I'm just over age 65 and I am scheduled to get a COVID vaccine. So it's a good thing. I am not jumping a line. Okay, moving on. Who else? Is somebody else?
Last is Brittany.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany. I'm also a neighbor in this area for about 3 years now. I'm also a student studying urban planning, so here to learn, but I'm also working for a community organization as well.
Wow. Brittany, you were welcome. We hope to show you a lot of how politics and planning and community activism all come together.
Yeah, especially this meeting. This is a strange agenda, strange meeting. Anyway, so then the next item within item number 1 is the approval of the agenda. So what we have on our agenda is public comments, a look at, and it's very complicated, so we probably won't get very far, but a look at the planning department's proposed comprehensive fee update. An item about the Angeles Vista Character Residential Overlay Historical District Historical Surveys. An item about 1509 through 1515 South Gramercy Place, which actually heads to City Council tomorrow, but turns out that no one knew that the historical house or not historical house, depending on who you ask, was demolished, even though this entitlement process was open. And we're going to talk about that. And then 1537 South Wilton Place, another like half a block away from this first location, was heavily damaged by fire on Friday, again in the middle of a case process. So that's the agenda. And with items 5 and 6, that this may involve us making a recommendation, may or may not involve us making a recommendation to the board to adjust our previously adopted positions or not. So this is the agenda. I do need a motion for approval.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
And I would need a second from anyone.
I'll second.
I second.
Okay, we have 2 seconds, Steve Wallace and Dan Bear. And that comprises 3 plus me, 4 votes before we even vote. So Jasmine and Brittany, how are you with this? Are we all okay with this agenda?
Yes, yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so I'm stopping the share, taking it off the screen, and I already. Okay, cool. So John typed into the chat box that he will be typing motions into the chat box. If you're new to Zoom, you're on your computer, if you would have your little cursor and scroll along the bottom of the black screen, you'll see a couple of things. We don't use polls. We don't use reactions usually, although you can. But if you click on the word participants, you'll bring up the names. You'll click on it. You'll see who's here, but you'll also see the ability to raise your hand. So that's a good function, although there are only 6 of us here. And then you can also click on the word chat. And what we, UNNC, have been doing with the chat box, it's only the people who are co-hosts can actually chat to the group. But what we do is we post our motions there, and that way when the meeting is over, we actually end up with a record of the motions in this public record. So that's how we do that. Okay, public comment. Does anyone have any public comment on items not on the agenda?
I'm going to make a public comment about the Van Ness project briefly. So a couple months ago, we voted on a few months ago, a project on Van Ness that was a proposed demolition of 2 historic houses that were not identified as historic, but they clearly are contributors to the character overlay zone. And so that has been in process where the developer has agreed to preserve the houses and build only behind them. So instead of 8 units on 2 lots, they now have 6 units on 2 lots, which they aren't ecstatic about, but they're making it work. So that was a success story. They're in plan check. And the point I want to make tonight, because it's basically it's already moving forward, is that the new CD10 has been in their early stages right now, responsive and really trying to help move that project along through plan check and really trying to pick up where old CD10 left off. And so that project looks like it's going to move forward to get permitted, and we will have preserved 2 houses that were previously on the verge of being demolished, like days away, and we'll get 4 new units and 2 renovated units in the neighborhood. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And indeed, John, council member Ridley Thomas put in a motion relative to this yesterday.
Yeah.
So, any other public comment? Okay, so the first item on the agenda, which you're gonna just love, is a planning department fee update. And I'm basically, it's not just because we're in sad financial shape now. The planning department for a couple of years now has been pushed to try and make sure that the fees it charges are will cover all of the expenses of, you know, what it takes to actually do a case. So do you see the screen share? I mean, do you see something on the screen?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. And so there's a whole lot of different kinds of cases that the planning department pushes through. Why I thought we would be interested in looking at the fees. I mean, I don't think we care what an oil company has to pay to get an additional approval. They just have to pay what they have to pay. I might be jaded on that, but what I was interested in looking at is, can you see that these are fees for historic related applications? Okay, I can't tell.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
I can keep zooming in, but then we're going to lose the right-hand side of the column. So
That's better.
okay,
Yeah.
It's just like I said, we're going to lose the right, because I won't be able to slide back and forth. But I guess we can see the column that are important. So the concern I have is that we're trying to have HPOZs and also the Mills Act be incentives to help our neighbors approve new HPOZs, not hate the existing HPOZs, and not be sent to the poorhouse to try and comply with the regulations. John, am I saying that right? I mean, there may be other reasons, but we've always tried to keep the fees affordable, correct?
I would agree with that, and I would agree with CPIO. Actually, that's probably a little bit different. That's an adjustment, but yes, any action in HPOZ beyond a administerial clearance will induce a fee.
Right. So what they're showing here is they're basically saying, here's what it really costs. So that would be the column that says total cost per activity. And so, for example, if you're doing if you're applying to have a certificate of appropriateness not involving new construction or additions in an existing HPOZ, they're saying for staff to go through the process, cost them $5,644. They currently charge for that application $1,279, and they want to increase that to essentially $1,700. John, what is a certificate of appropriateness not involving new construction or additions? What would that be?
Oh boy, I've been on HPOZ board also for 13 years. Let me think about that. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be for something that's not automatically considered, like,
Boy,
it's not conforming work, right?
it's not conforming work. It's a change, but I can't think of what that is.
But are changes that don't involve new construction or additions worth $1,700? I mean, in other words, do we want to say that's too much, or do we want to say, well, you know, they're asking for something extra, 17 is reasonable?
Because we can't think of what it could be. I'm guessing that they don't come up very often.
Right.
So I wonder if it's worth our breath to even talk about it in this meeting.
Well, what I'm getting at, no, I don't think we're prepared to make a recommendation. I think this is something we want to look into. This goes to Planning Commission and then to council, but I don't know if it's something that's going to be brought to the individual HPOZs also to discuss, or if we need to keep it at UNNC. I mean, it just seems to be getting pricey. And I'm not concerned that, well, this is interesting. So a new accessory building, certificate of appropriateness or compatibility for new accessory building construction. Would that be an ADU?
What line are you on?
Line 8, item 8.
I would think so.
So again, are we supposed to be encouraging it by anyway, these are all questions. I do not have answers.
I don't know if that's ADU because I don't think you need a certificate of appropriateness for an ADU. I think the state law forbids it.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm just saying, and then I'm looking at the Mills Act applications, and again, they're already charging a huge amount of money that never, luckily, I don't have to pay them on my existing Mills Act, but it's just becoming more and more expensive. And my concern is that if you add all of these things up, the incentives are beginning to go away. So, that's my broad concern. So I'm going to move on to farther down. There's a section on appeals. Let's see if I can find that. I might have to make this a little smaller so I can read it, and then bring it back larger so you guys can read it if you don't mind. Okay, so I'm too far. Anyway, so I'll start yakking while I'm looking for it. They're also proposing to raise the price of appeals, both appeals by an original applicant. So in other words, somebody's applied to do something and it was denied, whether it be denied by an HBOZ board, denied by the director of planning, denied by a commission. They could appeal the decision. There we go. So it was way back where I started. So it'd be line 1901B where my cursor is. So the staff is estimating that when somebody files an appeal, they invest anywhere from 60 to 80 hours dealing with the appeal, and they're not getting their money back, and they want to raise those fees. So first of all, they're raising the fees for actual applicants. So John, like a client of yours, I mean, I don't know if you've ever had to have that situation. There's not very many of them, 22 in the year that they were looking at. And then they're also not as much, but raising the appeals for individuals who may appeal a project in their neighborhood. So they're basically wanting doubling the fee, but it's still fairly low. It shows here is 158. There's other charges on top of that, so it would be perhaps $200. I don't think that's unreasonably high. What I find unreasonably high is that they spend 80 hours. I mean, I mean, it seems to me that they spend most of the time is spent justifying their own original action instead of seriously reading the appeals by either side and seeing if they have merit. So I'm being a little cynical. So, but what they're basically saying, it takes 80 hours of staff time to deal with somebody's appeal. And I'm making a note. So they're because there's not that many of them citywide. In the fiscal year 2019 to 2020, it looks like there were 33 total appeals, which doesn't seem that high with 7 area planning commissions and a city planning commission handling most of them. I mean, in other words, it just seems like a normal number. So I don't know. Comments? Anybody else care?
It seems like there's a lot of generosity in the person other than applicant, and it looks like they're trying to hold that down as best they can.
Yeah.
Still charging 1%. So that's, that's a fine line of where you don't want to kind of discourage democracy, but you also don't want to make it so easy that everyone on
Right.
their own can appeal everything that they just feel like by filling out a form. So,
No,
yeah.
I don't think $200, because again, the 158 will have some other charges. I don't think $200 is too much to charge. I think it's the 80 hours that's annoying.
Yeah, that to me sounds like a management issue, not.
Exactly.
Or I mean, but that's 2 weeks of someone's time to manage, shuffle, do the paperwork. I can imagine and add it all up, manage the reviews.
Hmm.
Might be heavy, but it's also city, and if it was a private business, maybe that would be less. But I can see things add up.
Oh, I'm sure it adds up to that time, but their inefficiency shouldn't fall in the back of
Right.
other people.
And it's not inefficiency. A lot of the time is spent justifying their original. I mean, I'm saying this cynically, but I've read so many staff responses to appeals where they're not actually ever admitting that they did anything that they might reconsider, I guess the best way of saying it. So they're finding reasons to justify, and that would be time consuming. So,
And then but also there's appeals that we haven't seen that take 500 hours.
perhaps.
And average them together with the ones that take, the ones that
Probably so.
they're 20.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That's probably
Right.
more. Yeah.
So anyway, these were just the two areas I was looking at. I don't know if anybody else. Oh, wait a minute. I'm just seeing a higher up where it says 1901A and then it's number 3. Clarification of Q classifications or D limitations. And they want the the applicant, anyone, to pay $9,614 so they can get the clarification of something that was murky in the first place and shouldn't need clarification since it should have clarity. Am I just being rude, John?
I think what I appreciate about this document is seeing it's trying to be transparent.
Yes.
And it's trying to, and it's Q classifications are and Qs and Ds are awful. They're awful to find.
Awful.
It takes some
They're
work.
impossible. Why blame the applicant? I'm just being cynical. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
So I appreciate that this document's very clear about how much it does cost, and if it does cost them, it's not the planning department's fault that they have to clarify Q conditions from 1987 that were poorly written or forgotten. So it does take research, and they were put in place mostly by citizen action, downzoning, changing. There's so many Qs and Ds that are activism things from the past that did the city enact them? Probably not. They did, but they were based on input from people like us. So I don't know. I appreciate this transparency, and usually people who need relief from Qs and Ds are developers, and they can afford $10,000 to get clarity on their entitlements. So I'm not worried about that one. I'm mostly appreciating this transparency. I'm actually finding it fascinating too about the precision of the number of hours that it takes, and they must have very detailed logs when they fill out their time cards.
That's why it took so long.
Well, I do wonder if they do they even really have time cards if they're on salaries?
Well, they have to log what they're working on. We do it at our work. If you're working on a certain project and you're doing a certain task and you do your time card just so you can track where hours are going. So yes, it appears that they do at item 8, 28.84. They didn't make that up. They took data from somewhere. That's empirical. So it seems to me, rather than just raising fees and saying, sorry, folks, this is what there is, they're putting precise percentages on empirical numbers of hours and current costs to say, we're not just charging you, we're charging you what it costs us. I think that's fair.
Okay. So I'm out of line to have my nose out of joint.
Absolutely not. You can, we're discussing it and that's what counts.
Right.
And the one that stands out is the 1%, which is for the people.
Mhm.
That's the one that
Oh, on the appeal. No, I'm
agree.
not opposed to it. I don't know anyone that we know who has also seen this document that's opposed to a $200 fee instead of it's currently around 115. So in other words, there's other charges along with what they're talking about here. There's some other charges. So it's still basically an affordable thing for an individual to pay. And many appeals are organization paid for anyway and not paid for by individuals. But I
So,
don't
and I'm just looking at time, what would be, is there any action that we take on this besides appreciating the knowledge? I appreciate the knowledge, but I don't know what we would do except,
well, the one I'm very concerned about how expensive they are making the Mills Act. And maybe I'm concerned about how expensive they're making applications in an HPOZ. I mean, again, I'd like to know what some of these are for.
yeah, those are public benefits that,
Mhm.
but you just, it's a double-edged sword. You don't want to, people asking for things. They're a good
Right,
act.
but what I'm trying to say is, if you look at the Mills Act, so that's a key benefit, and then we can move on, because I also don't want to be here really late tonight. But they're charging now, I'm going to round it up, $700. They're currently charging $650. They want to raise that to $678 just to apply phase 1. This is before you know whether or not you're going to even make it to phase 2 in the Mills Act application process. This is, you turn in your first round, which is 3 little essays and 10 photos. So basically, they're looking at the 3 essays and 10 photos and determining if this particular property might be eligible for the Mills Act. So that's part 1. And if it is, you then spend a bunch of time developing a full Mills Act application, and that's the second fee. That they're not raising that too much either. So, but we're now, because they raised it significantly a couple of years ago, so we're now looking at 12 plus 6, 18, 19, almost $2,000 to apply. And then they're charging at this same time another $1,600. So this is essentially all in the application process. Nobody's received any tax benefits at end of 14, the 3 items in 14. Then there is a city administrative fee, another $1,500. Then I'm not even looking at the appeal stuff. Then there's the Mills Act inspection fee. This is new, and it already is that essentially they're collecting $2,500, or in other words, $500 a year for the 5-year inspection periods. And you have to have a very high valued property that also does not have an ADU and also doesn't have, it has to be high valued but small number of rooms to get tax benefits that end up paying off those fees. And it's becoming a disincentive to people applying for the program. And I am just concerned. That's essentially, I'm just concerned. And I'm not concerned about the appeal cost, because usually the people who appeal don't have proper applications.
It has a high value result though.
No, not anymore, not necessarily, but the city doesn't have control over what the county assessor does. Meaning, just by way of example, David owns a number of Mills Act properties. 2 of them have not, one of them has never had a tax benefit in 10 years that he's had it. And the other one ceased to have tax benefits 4 years ago, but doesn't cease to have requirements. So it's just the way the county assessor's handling stuff, which city has no control over. So it's okay. I'm just putting it out, but I don't think I'm hearing a lot of support. So
I don't know how fine tuned a recommendation you can make. That's,
I
you
know.
It's, I mean, I think we could, if you want, if we want to entertain a motion, I think it could be, we feel like that HPOZ applications and Mills Act applications are incentives. They should not be disincentivized by high fees. And maybe the planning department considers lowering the recommended fee cost recovery percentage for those. And
Right.
that's
Right,
my-
because I am seeing that on the HBOZ, they're sticking to a fairly low recovery percentage.
Mhm.
Um,
Which is impressive, because people who benefit from HPOZ are regular folk who have regular houses that want to make changes, and they need guidance and help and assistance.
right. Steve Wallace, if he's still here, again, I can't see who's in the room.
I can't see.
What about in Harvard Heights, where I know the income levels are so much lower than some HPOZs? Have you been hearing anything about the high cost to apply for things?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
No, I think people just grumble anyhow about all fees, but I've not heard anything specifically about this.
Even the existing is what I'm asking you about, because not the
Yeah,
increases.
no, I haven't.
Okay. All right. So maybe I'm just
So-
oversensitive.
So the ones that are higher costs, 3 through 8, certificate of appropriateness are usually bigger projects that are costing $50 or $100 or $150,000. If you look at major conforming work, that's basic stuff that a lot of people who maybe not spending a lot of money on are going for. That one's $567, which may be a burden for someone who's
Mm-hmm.
adding a window. Adding $1,000 window costs $567 to do it. Maybe that's the one. I think they're striving for a little bit of progressivism here to make sure that the folks in the neighborhoods don't pay and the developers do pay. So maybe that's a general comment about incentivizing participation by normal homeowners. But I don't know if we have a solution to that, but it might be something that we suggest. But I see evidence of the fingerprints that they're trying to do that in here.
Right. And what is major conforming work on contributing elements?
That would be probably re-siding a stuccoed house with new siding. It might be, something that takes some construction. It might be tearing something down that was inappropriate on a contributor.
And why are we charging fees at all for that then?
It's major conforming work. It needs review, so that takes 9 hours of review, and they're trying to recoup that. But it could be something different. So you almost wish there was some discretion.
Right.
10A or 9A, people who are trying to do the right thing get a waiver of the fee. I'm not sure.
Right. And then the next one, that 10, modification of a certificate determination, would that be, they already got their certificate of whatever, appropriateness or compatibility, but now they need a modification?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think I mind that.
That means, oh, I forgot I wanted to add a bathroom too, and here's my change.
Got it.
It is.
And again, I'm going to keep asking questions, but I don't think we know the answer to this.
I was gonna say, is there a motion or anything to?
Well, this is so dense. I didn't necessarily think we had to have tonight a motion. So should we move on to things that might need motions?
That's what I was gonna ask. Is there anyone in the audience who feels like there might be some meat here to do something with, or otherwise is this just good knowledge to have?
I just wanted to say that this is great to see, but just based off of everybody talking about it, it seems like there's more of a determination that we want to see people that, like developers that can afford it, or something that is a higher value to pay those higher fees. Because when I've been to the Mills Act presentations, it seems like quite a bit of like investment people or developers or people with multi-family housing. So it seems to slowly dwindle out all of the single family homeowners that are interested in that that kind of program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that Mark Ridley Thomas is now our councilman and he's back. He is the council member who years ago at Council District 8 initiated the Mills Act program for City of Los Angeles. His original idea was that it would help lower income homeowners remain in their houses and do work and not be forced to sell them. So the original program was defined a little differently than it is now. And so all of those folks, including myself, not that I was poor, but it was, I am not subject to any of these fees because I have a contract. So all of these fees that they are doing now are for new applicants, but it has become so expensive to do it.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if they're also
You're
trying to limit
seeing-
the pool of applications. I don't
Well,
know.
well, actually, let me see. I don't see how I can easily do this.
Which is a little bit regressive, is if they're using fees to lessen their workload. I almost want to see there be raise all fees, and then the fees that they go over what they need, you put into a slush fund, not a slush fund, a fund that people can apply for based on need, based on scope of work, based on merit, that they can apply for them in a fairly, and I know that's adding a bureaucracy
Right.
onto bureaucracy, that they can tap into getting funding relief, which is obviously won't be
Right.
for people who bought $3 million houses, God bless them, last year and have to have high taxes on them. Or if it's somebody who's lived in their house for 30 years and wanting to reside their house and change the stucco. So from stucco to something more appropriate. So that's why I'm searching for the progressive. How do you help
Right.
people who need it and not help people who don't need it?
Right. Well, the other thing that's interesting, I'm sorry I made this smaller now, but if you see the column that has all the red numbers, estimated numbers per year. So the biggest number of HPOZ applications has become the major conforming work on contributing and non-contributing elements. So it's 193 of those. That's the new category that never existed. I mean, they created the category major conforming work to reflect that certain projects take staff time.
Yeah.
And so anyway, okay. So I think we can't, I don't see where a motion makes sense yet. But I would appreciate if anyone's actually interested in this. This whole document that I'm showing is up in the agenda packet, and maybe we can think of a motion to do at the next meeting or the meeting thereafter.
Okay, I think that's good. Anyone else have any input or on that? I think this is fascinating.
Yeah. Well, here's another fascinating now that I see it, and this is, to my point, 52 people applied phase 1 for Mills Act in whatever year that was, a year and a half ago, but only 11 made it through phase 2. 40 people were either rejected or self-rejected before going to phase 2. So 40 of those $650 fees went to nothing.
I'm sure there are endless fascinating facts in this.
No, but you can see that little number there went to nothing. And the major conforming work is the primary thing that they're taking in that year at HPOZ citywide. So those are interesting facts, but we're not supposed to be just dwelling on facts. Okay, are we good with unsharing this?
Yep, I think we should move on to item number 5.
Okay.
Or number 4, please.
Which is the
And the character residential overlay district historical surveys.
right. So this is what got happened. God, my brain is gone. As a result of our recent discussions over the project on Van Ness that John referenced in public comments, the initial issue back when the Angeles Vista Character Residential Overlay District was even proposed, so 2016, 2017, UNNC held a number of meetings to work on the proposed South Los Angeles Community Plan update, and we focused quite a bit on the Angeles Vista Character Residential Overlay Zone and the concept of these character residential districts. And when we looked at how they were going to define historic, the city planners who were creating this idea, were telling the community that these would be, quote, HPOZ light. So in other words, they were defining these new districts as being like historic preservation overlay zones, but without a community-based board, staff would make the decisions, and without individualized preservation plans, that they would use the Secretary of Interior standards. So they went out and had a whole bunch of community meetings throughout South Los Angeles and ended up with community support creating 10 character residential overlay districts, including the one here in UNNC, Angeles Vista. We also have one that predates this in Arlington Heights, but the circumstance is a little different. So we're focused only on Angeles Vista. It became clear back then that the Survey LA Historic Resources Survey that is for our area was spotty at best, did not cover anything close to the entire boundary of what they were calling the character residential district, which is from Washington to Pico, Manhattan Place, more or less Western, but Manhattan Place to Arlington. And the actual Survey LA covered maybe 25% of that, and then spottily some individual properties. So UNNC voted, went to Planning Commission in 2017 and asked that they not utilize Survey LA or not utilize it only, and be able to use other historical surveys to evaluate the status, as this says in the agenda. And the Planning Commission adopted our recommendation. And the City Council later that year, 2017, also adopted that recommendation. So the final ordinance says that in ours, and I think the other 9 character residential overlay districts, when the staff is to use either Survey LA or other historic surveys. What's happened in reality is they don't know how. Maybe John can pick up from here. Staff is saying, well, we can't, we can only use Survey LA. And the problem that happened on Van Ness is one of the big gaps is the entire west side of Van Ness between Washington Boulevard and Van Ness Boulevard was not included in the survey. And it appears to be a kind of gigantic mistake. And there's lots of other mistakes, but that's a big one.
Lots of them. So on Van Ness, you look at the map that has the character overlay zones, and half of Van Ness on the east side has properties that contribute to the zone,
Right?
and there's nothing on the other side. And when
But they're identical.
It's very consistent. It's both sides of the street are contributors to the character, and these houses that we were able to save by this win-win situation, it took us a lot of effort. And one of the stumbling blocks was this gap in the survey, and the planning department said we can't use anything but Survey LA, even though it says specifically that they can.
And even though they have another survey that the planning department itself commissioned, and it was conducted by a firm that used to be called Myra Frank, and then is Jones and Stokes, and it's part of an international firm, and they're on the list. And the historian who did it, Richard Starzak, is very well known, very well respected, and they don't want to use that survey either, which at least is more extensive and includes almost all the houses we've been having disputes over. And they say, whoa, we can't use it. It's like, why not? And there's no real good answer. So John, you had this conversation with the council office about, they seem to be willing to tell the planning department to do a new one?
No, only through emails that you saw. So I didn't have it, but the gist
Oh.
of it,
I'm so losing track. That was an email I saw.
yeah, that was an email, except we only use email. So I think what the effort is for item number 4 is to find a way for the planning department to either accept new surveys, which are very expensive, or use old surveys that already exist. New surveys cost $40,000, $50,000, $60,000.
Right.
Nobody has that money. Or use pre-existing surveys from reputable planning department approved already surveys that already exist, and just to give them that leeway, because right now they're being very conservative and they're only doing survey LA, which leaves many properties that should be part of the character overlay exposed to demolition. We almost lost the 2 on Van Ness. We already lost one on Wilton, and one was
Well,
pending.
we kind more or less
On Gramercy, rather.
that we have
On
tonight.
Gramercy. So and as you all, Angeles Vista is under intense development pressure because of TOC, which is fine, but it's creating, in my opinion, it's fine. It's creating a lot of pressure to upzone, and so that's where we're without protections.
Right. So yeah, you're right. It was an email. So I think the email was focused solely on the west side of Van Ness, and it was like, well, no, wait a minute. We really need the whole neighborhood, because it's just too many. It's just too much work to have to go through these discussions for every single house. And
Yeah.
frankly, for the developers, it's too much work to have to go through the discussions on every single house. And we have had more demolitions in Angeles Vista in the last 2 years, when in theory we have the protections in place, more demolitions than we've had in the prior 25 years.
So
And including the oldest house, one of the oldest houses in the neighborhood, and the oldest one that was standing is gone. I mean, in other words, among the demolitions, the oldest still standing isn't standing anymore, for example.
So to me, what we can do as part of this committee is to recommend, if at the pleasure of this committee, that we encourage the city, support the use of all historical surveys, either new and funded by the city, or existing by approved historical surveyors, and encourage that action to happen, to get Office of Historic Resources, OHR, and its leadership to move forward and be more expansive in their thinking, because right now they are not taking a leadership role in trying to resolve this, and follow basically the ordinance that's approved, which is Survey LA or other survey.
Well, my question, John, is, should we be that conservative, or should we actually say there is another survey? We know you have it because you gave it to us. It has 7,400 some properties on it in South LA. It's very expansive. It covers much more of Angeles Vista, and we recommend you use it to identify potential historic. In other words, it doesn't have to be a final word, but.
So I think it's whether we want to be more citywide and give them the help them prod along to preserve other, because we certainly can't be the only area of the city that was mis-surveyed by Survey LA, but we are UNNC, but Angeles Vista is our hot spot. So I think it depends on the pleasure of the committee what we should do. It seems to me focusing on Angeles Vista is a little lower hanging fruit, and just saying, we're here, we want this, use this, it exists, make it happen in our area. Thank you very much.
Well, yeah, I was saying the lower hanging fruit. The thing about that South LA survey with 7,400, it fully covers Angeles Vista and other neighborhoods. So it's more expansive than Survey LA. I have never gone to the actual trouble of highlighting in the database one by one. I'd have to do it one by one in a color, which ones are Angeles Vista, but it could be done.
It seems to me focusing on one survey that was approved by the city is
What's pre-
a safer bet, because if you give it a blanket other approved surveys, they'll be go, what other approved surveys are out there that we have to
So are
spend
you agreeing with me or disagreeing with me?
time agreeing with you?
Okay, I couldn't tell. And
Agreeing with you that
and I
two more-
realize I don't have the one we're talking about open, so nobody knows what I'm talking about, but I am going to see if,
paint a good picture. We understand. So any input from the group?
no. Doesn't seem that way.
I move that we recommend that the UNNC governing board writes, would this be a CIS law, or would this be a letter to the council office? What would this be?
Well, right now it would be a recommendation to the governing board, but I think what it would be is there's no council file. So it's not, I mean, there's no case scheduled. The only reason to call it a resolution is to speak with 3 minutes instead of 1. So I think this one would be a letter, well, that we recommend and that the executive committee could approve the letter, so we don't have to wait a full month, because I'm not writing a letter tonight.
Okay, so I move that we recommend to the UNNC governing board that we write a letter, that the executive committee writes a letter that sent to CD10 or sent to the.
I would say Vince Bertoni
Okay.
and
plan-
CD10.
To the council district, Office of Historic Resources, and the leadership of the planning department, that recommends that per the approved ordinance for the CPIO character overlay zone in Angeles Vista, that a survey, what's the survey called that's existing?
Well, the nickname is here, Susier, but I have it open now, but it's
Susier is fine. I've seen that.
SOUCCEIR database.
So that the planning department use when determining which properties are contributors to the character overlay zone in Angeles Vista, that they use the Susier survey in addition to Survey LA when determining those properties.
Right. It's to identify. I mean, did you write any of this down? Because I did not.
No,
right?
but I can talking and not speaking.
Okay.
I can do.
All right. Well, you want to say all this again? Huh?
UNNC, the Planning and Zoning Committee recommends to the UNNC governing board
Okay, I'm writing.
that the executive committee write a letter
What? Okay.
to.
Why don't we say the executive committee approves the letter?
Okay, approve a letter to CD council office, planning department, and the Office of Historic Resources to use the Susier survey in addition to the Survey LA survey when determining which properties in the Angeles Vista character overlay zone are contributors or not. How's that?
Yeah. I'm writing. Okay, so while I'm fixing all of my typos, let me ask you another question. And Steve, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. The other problem with Survey LA was that it utilized National Register criteria, but the purpose of the character residential overlay zones was to make it HPOZ light. So HPOZs have somewhat lesser standards, right? For something to be a contributor, because if you have an alteration, the property can still be considered a contributor. Should we add to it that we want it to, they should utilize HPOZ?
We're getting a little, to me, it's getting into a little bit of the wonk of it, but I'm going to say, if we want to add to it, saying, and add in supportive arguments, such as what you just said, Laura, to back up this as at the discretion of the executive committee.
Yeah, okay, and the letter could add supportive arguments at the discretion of the executive committee. Okay, so now I'm still cleaning up typos. So approves a letter to be written to be addressed to, right?
Yeah, sure. We can have the spirit of whatever you post.
I know, but I'm not posting crap because I'd be too embarrassed.
We're all friends, Laura. We're all friends.
I'm almost done. And sources.
So while you're typing, I'm going to say, chat. This is actually not a theoretical activity. Laura and I have literally spent scores, if not hundreds of hours trying to work around this error, whether it's putting out fires literally and figuratively. And
Literally, huh? Darn.
so this could have real implications to really help the UNNC district not have to be reactive to everything that happens when things are threatened, and to have something in place that we can hang our hat on and that developers can use to have some surety about what's in store for them when they are proposing changes in the neighborhood.
Okay, I've got this clean enough anyway.
Great.
I'm posting it.
And I'll second that.
Now.
Great, thank you.
What other surveys out there? So we've got basically these two that we're kind of hope to be working from. Isn't there a third one that we had relied on before, Laura? I mean, fairly recently, within the last year or so, or not? Am I just
No, I'll quickly show you. I mean, your eyes will glaze over, so we will definitely not keep this up on the screen. But do you see? This is a Saussure. It's really hard to follow. I happen to post, starting at property number 2186, which happens to be 2101 West 31st Street. John, whose house is that? Because that would be now within the Jefferson Park HPOZ.
That is at the corner it's at the northeast corner of 31st and Cimarron.
Well, my point being, a lot of what's in here did become the basis for the Jefferson Park HPOZ and the Harvard Heights HPOZ by way of example.
Yeah.
So that, in other words, it's a totally valid survey, but it has so many properties on it.
Oh,
Yeah, you see, it's so dense. So that's why we're not going to really look at individual properties.
I think this serves us well, Laura, that we now, this committee has a vision of what Saussure was and how thorough it is. It wasn't just a hack job from some.
No, because I mean, if I slide over, well, there's no, yeah, there is. See now, and so there was a prior survey. Steve, you're right, but it's actually earlier, not later. So see, this still is Jefferson Park, but you see how they had done a prior survey. So that tells you how many years Jefferson Park was in play. Because when Jefferson Park was adopted, what, in 2011, 2010?
11.
Yeah, so the first survey was, 1995.
This backs up our motion.
Okay,
But
so
why not? Why the hell not?
okay, so I still have typos, but there it is, the motion.
So the motion has been made and seconded by Steve Wallace.
Okay, so I mean, who made the motion?
I did.
Moved.
I'm going to call a question here.
Go ahead. I vote yes.
So I guess everyone who's not on video, either raise your hand in the chat box or raise your hand on video. I know I can't raise my hand because I'm a.
Well, John and I can only do it on video. So so we have Brittany, Jasmine, Steve. Okay, got two yeses.
I say yes. I'm trying to find the raise hand thing. I can't.
It's okay. So, well, we know you moved it, and Dan, are you raising your hand?
Dan did an auctioneer move and just.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, moving on. So thank you.
That's approved. Thanks very much, everybody.
And this one goes to board tomorrow night, just for sure. All right, the next item, so sad, is, okay. Tomorrow, there is a hearing at the Planning and Land Use Management Committee of City Council. So in effect, it's the hearing for City Council for the property at 1509 South Gramercy Place. So this was a 1904, very early, not the earliest house in the community, but pretty darn early. Mission revival, so it was a very early mission revival, expansive residence at 1509 South Gramercy Place. We have been at UNNC dealing with this proposed project for a couple of years, and we voted to not have it demolished. And then later on, we voted to support the appeal, which is about both whether or not it was properly what they call vested as two in the weeds, and also whether the entire categorical exemption from CEQA is appropriate. And the appellant, the person who appealed this case, said, the appeal was that it wasn't appropriate to exempt this project from the California Environmental Quality Act. And that is because, A, the developer was allowed to pick his own historic consultant, and he did hire someone. And then that person, the first consultant he hired, came back with an opinion that the house is historic. So then he didn't like that. He hired a second person who came back with the opinion that the house was not historic. He liked that. He submitted both of those evaluations to the city. The city said neither one of the historic consultants rendered their opinions in the proper format, which I find astonishing, and then allowed him to find a third historic consultant who this time also said it wasn't historic. So the city decided that A, it wasn't historic, B, that even though it's on the character residential list as a contributor because the survey LA did say it was historic, it didn't matter anymore because a developer was allowed to hire someone to say not. And 3, the other thing related to this was simply that what the California Environmental Quality Act actually says is if there is a difference of opinion among experts, then you have to do a more complete evaluation. So the city says, oh, we don't think so. So that's where it is, we thought, meaning there's an appeal. It's taken forever during COVID for the case to move forward. And a couple of weeks ago, driving down the street, we discovered that the house was demolished.
And not only that, but there is a 4-story building that is all built up to the 4th story.
Right.
So it's been built up for over a year, and the new building that is replacing it, which is a condominium, is 60% finished in construction.
Right. And John, I have some dates. The demolition turns out to have been at the end of June. So the appeal to council was filed in March. So for whatever reason, the building and safety actually issued the demolition permit, but it wasn't used. But then they went out to the property in early June or late May of 2020 to do a pre-demolition inspection. So that gives us our timing. So it wasn't demolished before that. And for whatever reason, even though there was a pending case, the demolition permit was not withdrawn by building and safety. So there's a procedural problem there. At this point, there's no house. The new information is that the developer hired a lawyer who's thinking about, who's making an offer, not to us. We can't, I mean, there's nothing we can do with an offer, but it's a very small amount of money. And apropos to the idea that maybe a brand new survey could be done, maybe money could go into that fund, but it's not anything the neighborhood council can take an action on. So the question becomes, do we pivot and change our opinion? Our voted opinion is that we oppose the demolition. I know it's gone. And oppose the project and support the appeal. And whatever decision we make tonight doesn't change what I could say tomorrow at the hearing.
For those of you who are interested,
Yeah, it's that one.
is the demolished house.
So it was designed by a really famous in their time architect. To the left, you see that picket fence. When it was originally surveyed, if you look at the very far left, there's a arch. That archway continued all the way across and was demolished by the current owner without permits. So in the survey photo, Survey LA, all the Mission Revival artwork was still there and would have been easily emulated.
So I'm going to summarize everything Laura said. So this has been an administrative mess with expired permits and procedural error with demolition permits issued by Building and Safety. A house that was clearly in a not even in a gray zone. It was identified by Survey LA as historic.
As National Register.
So it jumped the list. And so what Laura's suggesting with the developer has offered to ante up some kind of fee.
Weeny amount of money.
and that could be applied. And again, UNNC can't do that because that'd be extortion.
No, we can't do it.
Yeah, we can't do it. But anyway, so I'm not sure what that means. What would the motion mean?
Right.
To
so
at least get some kind of feedback.
So I'm going to share the screen one more time. This is the memo I received from the appellant. So this is what they want because they know it's gone. But so they want $75,000, but we can't vote on how much money. Let me just say it's a big gap between what they want and what was offered, and I mean a hurdle that could never be.
So Laura, what can we do as a neighborhood council committee? Because we can't do this because that's
well, okay.
What can we do?
Okay, well, there's a couple of things. So in other words, it's going to the Plum Committee tomorrow. It will not go to the full city council until earliest sometime next week. So we could make a recommendation, but not about money, to the council office. It looks this is very technical, but the last item, number 5, and the item before that, number 4, I think are very pertinent, as well as number 2. So the point is, do we want to recommend a finesse of our original stand to say that we actually support, even though the house is gone at this point, we still would support upholding the CEQA appeal, and as the applicant suggests, looking at number 5 is sort of shorthand, instead of considering it a categorical exemption, require that there be a mitigated negative declaration process that evaluates the cumulative impacts to the Angeles Vista and identify mitigations and consider, I don't know the last one, I don't know that we want to do that. Consider requiring that 25% of the condominiums be low to moderate income. I don't think we can do a money thing. But the point is, it's already under construction. So this would be a cost, but not a delay. It seems that what Building and Safety decided was, since the first step of doing a condominium is build the apartment and then convert it to condo, that they looked at this as being by right, and it didn't matter to them that there was a simultaneous entitlement case with the planning department, and it was in appeal. So this was a loophole. So I don't know if we want to eliminate that loophole on the future. I don't know if we want to say we continue to support the appeal and want it to be an MND, because there's been so many other demolitions that they should explore that, and what's the mitigation. I don't know. This is all technical at this point. Or do we want to do nothing?
Give us a.
No, I'm in a weird place. I don't know what to do. I mean, I feel like we should not withdraw our existing position, meaning we oppose the demolition even though it's gone. We support the appeal. So my question would be, do we pivot and support the appeal and ask for an MND like they're asking for? Do we support the appeal and ask for number 2, investigate how this could happen? You see number 2 up there?
Yeah.
Do we essentially do nothing at the moment?
What are the deliverables on number 2? Is that a report? And then if could the developer negotiate with the city to say, well, we've asked for this report in lieu of the report on this moot point because the house is gone, rather than go through all this headache, they can negotiate themselves whether there's a fine or a fee or something, but even though we can't get involved with that.
Yeah, well, here's the thing that I don't see where the fun. I mean, he didn't demolish without permit. That's a double negative. Building and safety gave him the darn permit and did not withdraw it, even though it looks like building and safety should have withdrawn it. But they didn't withdraw it, so he used a valid permit to do the demo, which is incredibly weird.
And then what about the design of the new building? I mean, that's something that should have gone before the committee. I mean, this committee should have approved the design and the.
No, it did go before the committee. We did not approve the design.
Right. So then if they're building something that's not been approved by this committee, or did that even matter? Because that's the second part of this.
Right.
Because they're building something that, do we even know what they're going to build? And
yeah, I mean, I'm going to have a hard time pulling up the renderings. No, it's awful. Ugly.
That said, that's
I don't know what to say.
Subjective, and it's, you know, technically by right once this structure was gone. So to me, the issue is about removing the existing structure without due process.
Well, yeah, John, actually, I mean, Steve's asking a correct question though. This is the case where essentially the guy had applied for a building permit sometime in mid 2018, but he never used it. So originally they talked about, well, he gets to use it because he's vested. But by the time we got to the discussion, meaning UNNC, the public hearing, etc., technically he lost his vesting. And at the hearing at the Area Planning Commission, the planner, who's in charge of case processing this, actually informed the commission and the audience that when he received the appeal that pointed out that the vesting was gone because it had expired, he recommended to the developer that he hurry up and go to building and safety and get the permit renewed. And then the developer did do that. He renewed the permit in February of 2020. It was already past the vesting time because you have to use it within 18 months, meaning start construction, or renew it within 17 months. And so that was another weirdness to this whole thing, where it seemed as if the city officials were bending over backwards to help this project move on. And I don't know anything more than that about how this could be, but it always seems to go back to building and safety and not planning in this case.
Yeah.
So I don't quite know what to do. And we don't necessarily have to do something based on this memo. I'm just saying.
So my feeling is I want to get this moved forward. I think we should do something to get on the books that UNNC has concerns about what happened here in the process. So it's something to the effect of, we make a motion to write a letter to CD10, LADBS, and Planning Department about the process by which 1509 South Gramercy was demolished.
Okay, I'm stopping the share. Are you typing this time, or do I have to go? You are typing this time? Thank goodness.
About the process by which 1509 South Gramercy was demolished without a full review of historic.
Well, how it was demolished when there was an appeal, a legitimate appeal pending.
When there was.
Or something like that. I mean,
legitimate appeal pending based on
legitimate is probably the wrong word, because that's us saying it was legitimate, but
based on there was an appeal pending.
right, in the city process.
An appeal pending in the city.
Yeah.
Based on the
I mean, in other words, don't we think that when there are appeals, they've been accepted, the appellants have paid money that was accepted. I mean, and we already know it was only $115, not 13,000, but it was, it's real money. It's more than $1. Isn't that supposed to put a halt on things? And we are in a pandemic. It's taken forever. I mean, we understand that too, but yeah, I mean, whatever you want to write, but something to that effect.
I think the most we can do is say, and it's on our radar, it needs to be investigated, and they aren't getting a hall pass for LADBS or the developer, regardless of the merits or demerits of their current projects. But we aren't passing judgment on that. So I think we just recommend, based on item number 2 in the appellant's letter, that's where
that in addition to our previous stand, that we want this investigation to happen. We're not recommending changing our position, right?
To the previous. Okay.
Right.
And when was that? When was that?
Our previous vote was February 2020. Hang on. I can actually give you an exact date.
I'm saying February 2020.
Yeah, our original vote resolution and CIS resolution was February 6, 2020.
Okay, I'm posting that. That is my motion.
It's just so frustrating with building and safety. I mean, here we go again, just because of somebody's incompetence. It's just so frustrating. You just want to see a supervisor get fired over something like this. It's absolutely ridiculous I doubt that this developer is going to face any consequences. No one in building and safety is going to face any consequences. We've lost a great building, and this is going to happen again because it's like, okay, well, we want to find out what went wrong, but what are going to be what's the consequences? What's to guarantee that this won't happen again, as we know it will? It's just
the only thing we can do is give political support to listen to an appellant who can sue for damages, which we cannot do, and maybe those damages can be used Pennsylvania station demolition style to affect change so this doesn't happen again. So that's the only thing I can think of, is that we can do the best we can to raise our hand in objection, get it on their radar, and have them listen to appellants who can take deeper action.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
You guys, we don't have a second on the motion yet. We do now.
A second.
Okay, thank you, Jasmine.
Well, and Dan also did. So, I will put both. Okay, so it was moved by, I'm sorry, John, right?
Yep. Okay, so I think that's about all we can do. It's frustrating, but I think that's
Right.
that's about it. So I'm going to call that question.
Okay.
Get this on, and also
I vote
everyone,
yes.
this gets us in the historical list of actions we have taken, so we can refer to it in the future, which we often do. It's like we already took action on this and it was official. So,
Right. Okay, I vote yes.
here we go. Everyone raise your hand or
Raise your
Yes.
blue hand or real
I-
hand. We don't care.
Brittany, yes. John, yes. Laurie, yes. Dan, yes. Jasmine,
yes.
yes. And Steve Wallace, yes. Okay, we're
Okay.
unanimous.
All right. Okay, so next item is the darn fire. I mean, it's more than a fire, but it's this house. This is okay. So at first, I'm going to say Laura, did not go into the house after the fire at 1537 South Wilton Place. However, my camera hitchhiked with someone who did. So I'm gonna go. Have a photo of this right this second, but I actually need to go back to our agenda to see what I put on the agenda about it. So basically, 1537 South Wilton Place is a house that you see on the screen that we have also voted to support the appeal, oppose demolition, and oppose the project as presented. In this particular case, it's a TOC project that requested, TOC is transit-oriented community, so that you get incentives to be kind of a much bigger project than otherwise would be allowed if you provide some affordable housing. And so this particular project requested a whole lot of extra incentives. And so it went to the Planning Commission, and just like UNNC thought the design was really bad, so did the Planning Commission. So when this went to the Planning Commission, I want to say maybe April or May, I can't remember exactly when, but they basically turned down part of the appeal, which the part that said it's not right to have a 5-story building in the middle of a block, in the middle of a character residential overlay, where everything else on the block is 2 stories and single family homes and duplexes, even though it's got the multifamily zoning. It should be set back.
Laura, you aren't sharing right now. Obviously, it's a blank screen.
Yeah, I'm sharing for, I'm sharing, what am I sharing? Photos.
It's a blank screen.
Anyways, so this is the house, and it was designed by a very famous architect. The historic assessment, the historian, who's usually very good, was not allowed to go inside. He rendered an opinion that the house did not reflect the work of the architect, but he had never seen the inside. So the commission turned down that piece of it. They turned down the part of it where it was argued that it should be required to follow the CPIO, the Character Residential Overlay District Design Guidelines. But they said, nonetheless, the design isn't good and you have to redesign it. And this case went to, again, one of these that sat around for a long time because of COVID, and then went to planning, to the city council's planning committee a week and a half ago, and then burned last Friday. And I'm just sharing some random photos. So that's it. Doesn't look so bad from the front. Get to the side, you can see is really bad. I'm using the word burn, really passive voice. And then we have some photos of the remnants. So once you get to this, you see that's the front door. It's fine, but it's a I didn't take these photos, so you can't, not the photos I would have taken because you can't see as much as you might hope. That's a surviving leaded glass transom window. Another leaded glass, different one, transom window. The firemen broke the beautiful multi-panel stained glass. You can see how it would have been, but it's not recoverable. And that's on the staircase. So here, I think you're standing on the landing, on, you know, filled with debris from the fire. It's awful fire. Fireplace mantle, a fireplace mantle, a very charred, I guess, china cabinet. So, you know, the problem is that it's really, really burned. And I don't, John, you went by it, right? I mean, someone who really loved the house would probably try and figure out with their insurance company, could they do something? But obviously the developer doesn't really love the house. So,
So this leads to questions of houses that are neglected and exposed to risks like
Right.
fire. There isn't any evidence, of course, that it was lit intentionally to burn it down, because it was going to council tomorrow to have this process go forward. So the timing is odd, but it was, you know, but it wasn't secured, didn't have a fence. It was exposed to. I think there's a person living in it currently, isn't that correct?
three people are still living in it despite the fire.
So it's all about
Yeah.
just it's another water. It's like we have had two.
Okay, we're having to pick our words carefully because we are being recorded.
Yeah, I'm not.
No, I'm picking my words
Oh.
carefully because we are being recorded. I mean, there's a couple of unfortunate things. One, I mean, to make it more suspicious, it went up in all of that damage was just 30 minutes. Whereas the house on 9th Avenue that burned, the fire department, it took 5 hours to put it out and has less damage. So that basically means there was an accelerant, but not gasoline. I mean, there was just so many piles and piles of trash that must have acted as an accelerant, even though it was also pouring rain. So this is, you know, the owners didn't burn down the house, obviously. The homeless squatters probably very accidentally burned down the house because it was their home. And in fact, the person who walked through the house with my camera was invited in by the squatter and said, "You're welcome, it's my house," which of course it's not. So, but it's a very unfortunate situation. Just in terms of the relationship with the neighbors, one of the people who works for the development team was there a week ago Monday, so before any city council action, and said to the little lady who lives next door that they would be able to demolish the house this week. And they would never have been able to demolish the house this week, even if, and council did support them, but there's still a 30-day period before any permits are technically can be done to give the appellant time to decide whether or not, you know, I mean, there's in state law a 30-day period. So it made it seem suspicious. But it sounds like, again, I've talked to the developer now, it sounds like it was somebody's offhand remark. It wasn't his. And he never was there. So I think we've been asked to change our vote once by the council office, John. We're asked not to support the appeal and to, you know, all of that. I don't see any reason why UNNC needs to change its position. There is now also an effort to get an agreement that all of the character pieces that may still be in there be rescued before any demolition and potentially utilized in a new design for the project. The developer has agreed to do a new design. I don't know that he necessarily thinks he's agreed to do a new design that meets the CPIO guidelines, meaning step it back, have a transition height so in the part that is adjacent to the single family homes on either side be compatible with them and then not go high until behind. He'd lose units. I don't think he thinks he's agreed to that. And I don't know, UNNC cannot take possession of physical character elements, so I don't know that we should be voting on that either.
I don't think that's enforceable, and how do we track that?
Right. Right.
So what are our options here? Again, it's water over the dam, the house is burned, but how can we get this on a radar that it's the whole situation, including
Well,
the design, which is huge. Even
Well-
I'm supportive generally of new development. So
yeah,
what are
it's unusual for the planning commission to reject a design. It has to be very bad for them to have rejected it. It's just that I'm not sure the developer is actually on the same page as the council office about what it means to redesign. The council office asked for a redesign that would be compatible with the character of the neighborhood. And the developer has written a letter to the file that says he's happy to work with, and he named the two planners at planning department that he's always been working with on a new design. And the councilman had said with the experts in the community, I mean, in other words, I'm not sure everybody's even those folks are on the same page. Do we want to even weigh in on that?
what would that look like? We write a letter to reiterate our previous action regarding the new development and
strongly suggest that that the design meet all CPIO guidelines.
the new design be redesigned and or re-reviewed or reviewed for compliance, complete compliance. We might as well write a little subjective for comprehensive compliance, comprehensive compliance with the South LA.
Well, the character residential
Yeah.
CPIO.
Yeah.
You don't have to say
South
Angeles
LA,
Vista.
or South, I can't remember, South LA CPAO character residential overlay zone design guidelines.
Right. Because I did have a conversation with Kevin Keller, who's the executive director for the planning department. So number 2, whatever the title is. And
he lives in the neighborhood.
And he lives in the neighborhood, but more importantly, what I pointed out to him is the reason the planning commission could also require a different design is that because of the number of incentives this project has asked for, it is required to comply with, it just is generic, design guidelines. I mean, in the TOC ordinance, it says design guidelines, but it doesn't specify which ones. So there's no reason why it shouldn't have to comply with the design guidelines of the neighborhood it is in versus the design guidelines of Van Nuys, for example. So it's just, since it has to comply with design guidelines, I think it should comply with our own. And I have an important reason for that. Anger aside, burned down house aside, all of those. This will be the only project, if it doesn't comply with the design guidelines, it will be the only project that ever will be able to be built that doesn't comply with the design guidelines, because there's no more question as to vesting, no vesting. I mean, it's, yeah. So
I'm going to make a motion that the UNNC Planning Zoning Committee, I've already written it, recommends the UNNC Governing Board to write a letter to reiterate its previous action regarding the new development and strongly suggests the new design the new project be redesigned and or revised for comprehensive compliance with the South LA CPIO character residential overlay zone design guidelines with a thorough review by staff and the CPC.
Okay, well, and Mark's actual motion was neighborhood experts, so you should add that. Because that would throw you into the mix probably.
I accept that.
But Mark's motion was to add the neighborhood experts. So whatever that might mean, but let's make sure we have that in there.
Okay, and thorough review by neighborhood
He said experts. I don't know what it means.
experts.
Design experts?
Representatives.
Sure.
That will cover just about everybody.
Okay.
Staff, city staff, and the CPC.
Right.
Okay, that's what I just did it
All right.
in the chat.
Is it? Yes, it is. Okay. I'm hearing children.
It might be my. Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. I like it. I like it.
Oh, my AirPod died.
You
so
know
don't
what?
give me the
I
background
like
noise.
meeting on Zoom in these all of our committees. I actually really like it, and I don't know if we'll be able to continue to do it once the emergency in California is declared over.
You'll
'Cause
find
it-
it, because I think for a lot of public meetings, it's much more efficient and you get better participation.
Right. Governing board, I'll be glad to be in person again.
So that's my motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second,
Who was that? Dan?
Dan.
Dan.
Okay, I call the question.
All right. It's a yes.
Yeah, all those in favor, please raise your blue hand or get on video. We got Dan, yes, Laura, yes, Jasmine, yes, Brittany, yes,
And Steve,
and Steve, yes, unanimous approval.
Nope. In effect, on the same agenda item, but it would be a different motion. The reason this house burned is because it was never secured. The owner says he tried but never secured it. He was never able to. They kept breaking in. I'm not going to disbelieve him. I don't think he tried hard enough, but it's so common right now. It has been for some years because we have so many people who are homeless, basically. But I feel that any property, if it's in the process of an entitlement application, that the owner needs to keep it occupied, whether that means tenants stay until after the entitlement's been issued and building permits have been issued, or a caretaker, but I mean, keep the lights on, keep the water running, keep at least some heat on, so it's habitable and occupied, and that would avoid this. Now, our new, the new CD10 deputy, who's the chief deputy, actually spoke to the fire department about this incident, this house, because it's shocking. I mean, in other words, just imagine you're brand new at Council District 10, and the next thing you're dealing with is one house burns and the other one turns out to have been demolished and nobody knew, right? And there's other things. These are not the only two things, but it's like, surprise. But she talked to the fire department, and this is probably not a big surprise, but the fire chief told her that all they're doing all day long, every day now, is either transporting people who are really ill with COVID to hospitals or putting out fires set in by homeless people all day long, everywhere throughout the city. And I don't think it's going to stop unless these buildings stop being not occupied. So I don't know if this is the right time to add a letter, or if we should agenda this as separate meeting as a bigger.
I would say let's agendize it for next meeting. It's 8:43. I would
Right.
advocate that we've done a lot in our hour and 45 minutes. And I would say, let's go that in the future, and let's all get rest for tomorrow's marathon
Tomorrow is a marathon meeting
board
for
meeting.
those who are interested. But you know what? Please, I mean, for everybody, I mean, if you're on the board, you have to stay the whole time. But for everybody, the first 30 minutes or so. I mean, it's reception, check-in, but we're going to have a PowerPoint presentation on trailblazing African Americans who lived in our community. It's sort of honoring Black History Month. So that's from 6:30 to 7. The meeting really starts at 7, but we like to have interesting presentations in that first 30 minutes so that we can really start on time, so board members have gathered and we actually have quorum by the time we're ready to start. So this month will be that. And just to give you a heads up, I think next month we'll have the city controller out again, but he's going to be sharing his equity database, the new project he's working on, which is looking at things like the digital divide, by census tract, who has internet, who doesn't. And the following month we'll have the new civil rights department, the head of that, Capri Maddox. So if you didn't know this already, the first 30 minutes of our meetings are often really fun, although December was just everybody wearing ugly Christmas sweaters and sharing. So, okay.
So we have one last item, follow-up of previous cases, old business. Anything to share from anybody?
The other thing that's on the City Council Plum agenda tomorrow, I think no contentiousness, is the nomination, Historic Cultural Monument nomination for the Art Deco Streamline Modern building on the corner of St. Andrews and Venice. And UNNC voted to support that as well. And just to give everybody an idea of how slow the world of Office of Historic Resources works, we voted to support that nomination on October 4th, 2018. And it's just now hitting council. So it hadn't been turned in at the time we voted. We read a preview, but it took well over a year to get on the initial agenda.
Is that house threatened at all?
Yes.
It still is?
Well,
It was.
I don't know. It'd be silly for it to still be threatened in that the zone is now R2 and it has 8 units.
Yeah.
So there'd be no functional reason to want to demolish it because you have more units now than you would for any new construction. So I don't know.
So Laura, I'm putting in the notes. Laura gives an update on the corner of St. Andrews and Venice.
Yeah, it's called the School of I, which is a strange, I mean, that's its actual original name, School of I. And there's a whole great narrative history. It was originally a school, not residential. And anyway.
So it's going to vote for what?
It's going to the planning. So the Cultural Heritage Commission voted to recommend it to City Council as to be listed on our, it's technical, but to become a designated historic cultural monument based on both its architecture, which is actually quite intact and stunning, I'm told. Dorit went on that site visit. It was one of the few site visits that allowed people at it because it's vacant. And they also, School of I, EYE, like your eye. The person who founded it the whole thing was to help people not be blind. I don't get it, but there was a whole there was exercises. It was it was a movement across the country, and there were very famous people involved. It's an interesting 300-page nomination. Let me just tell you. So anyway, the Cultural Heritage Commission has recommended it positively to the City Council. We have now transitioned City Council persons. I don't know. I didn't see anything online with the owner objecting to it, but I have no crystal ball. So I will be present tomorrow-ish.
The update. Any other updates on previous cases? Okay. Hearing none.
I don't have any.
So if anyone wants to save the chat, go down to the 3 little dots in the lower right-hand corner of the chat, and you'll see an option that says Save Chat, and it will be saved to your desktop if you want it for reference for any addresses or motions or anything like that. So that's
right. And John, you're going to do that too, right? I don't need
to. I'm saving it.
Right, because mine will automatically just, when we shut off the meeting, will go to my computer.
Okay, that's the end of our items. Our next meeting is on February 17th. If you have anything that you might want, please contact Laura or I and on the agenda for.
Right.
Thank you both.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good evening. Thanks for
Okay.
coming.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks. Good
Bye.
night.